Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. The murder of Pressy Baver. The Blauwevmans County Police Station was a horrible place for officers and criminals alike. The station had been built in 1932, and to most everyone's sadness, had been one of the only buildings to hold up during the Second World War. The station was built from old, withering bricks, and the man who was in charge of keeping the ivy along the sides of the building contained was too busy hitting on women to actually get the job done. The inside was even worse. The oak doors were creaky on their rusty hinges, and the musty concrete jail cells were cracking due to the recent heat surge the Netherlands were experiencing. The small cubicles for officers were tight, and the air conditioning rarely worked. To make things worse, the computer system was terrible. Sometimes, officers would sit for hours just to wait for a 12-page document to load. It didn't help that Blauwevmans was a city in the middle of the mountains, away from most metropolitan. Just getting into the next county took 2 hours. The only good thing that had happened to the police station in the past month was that the exterminator had came. The rats were gone, and they wouldn't be back. But from where Evian van Beek was sitting, she swore she saw a rat scurry past the chief of police's office as she and Lucas Hoysk waited to be called in for questioning. Evi tapped her feet on the wooden floors, anxiously looking around. The police station was crowded for a Sunday night. Some officers were packing up to leave for the night. Others cursed as their computers failed to upload their files. It looked like one of the cops, Sergeant Shea, was having a small party. Evi leaned over her seat, watching some of the officers chat and shove forkfuls of red velvet cake into their mouths. Maybe a birthday? Evi slouched back into her chair and sighed. Lucas bit his lip, staring curiously at the ceiling. Evi knew that look. "What denk je wel net?" Evi asked, pushing a dark hair out of her face. Lucas shot Evi an alarmed look. "Evi," he hissed, "talk ahead angles." Evi gave him a puzzled look. They were both studying English as a world language. They were almost fluent. But why practice for the upcoming test when they're in a police station about to get questioned as suspects of a murder? Evi looked around before repeating her question. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas rubbed his strawberry blonde hair. "They can't understand us if we talk in English," he said, his Dutch accent well enunciated. Lucas tilted his head to the side, indicating the officers eating cake behind him. Lucas continued, a worried look on his face. "I know the plan didn't exactly go according to plan," Evi shot Lucas a deadly glare. "Lucas, we killed." Evi peered over her shoulder, making sure the officers weren't paying any attention to them. She lowered her voice. "Pressy, we killed Pressy, the mayor's son, but they have no proof it is us. All they saw was the security tapes," Lucas stated, exasperated. "We were running. So what? That could mean we were running away from the murderer." Evi bit her lip. "We did it. We have to confess. If we don't, and they find out it was us, there will be much bigger." "Is it consequences?" Lucas shook his head. "Consequences, you mean? But what if they don't find out it was us? We could lie and be done with this. And what if they do?" Evi hissed loudly, tears sparkling in her eyes. She tugged at the neckline of her purple shirt. "Either way, I do not want to end up in Gavanjanus." Lucas frowned. "I'm afraid neither lying nor telling the truth will get you out of jail. At least we have a shot if we lie, but that is not the right thing to do. We could get a worse sentence if they do find out it was us." "Lucas, we killed someone," Evi cried. Small tears began to flow from her blue eyes and stream down her face. Lucas looked over at her helplessly, gritting his teeth. His knuckles were white as they gripped the seat of his chair. "They're going to call us in any minute," Lucas said softly. "So pick your poison." Evie dried her tears, sighing sadly. She looked up and pointed to the chief's door. "Lucas, the chief. Ich kommt heran." Evi gasped. Lucas suddenly looked very worried, but he put on a fierce face. As the chief turned the brass doorknob from the inside, Lucas took a deep breath and whispered, "Let's go, Evi." Barvan de Vries was a tall man with wispy black hair and piercing dark blue eyes. He wore his shiny gold badge proudly and was never without a gun under his sweater. In the work area, he wore his gun on his utility belt. Much to the chief's pleasure, the weapon seemed to intimidate the teenage suspects in front of him. The two, according to his files, were seemingly clean, but were the primary suspects for the murder of Pressy Baver, Evian van Beek, and Lucas Hoysk. Chief de Vries's lips curled. This would be fun. The chief put on a menacing face and looked from Lucas to Evi. The girl was fidgeting slightly, almost unsure of what to think. Lucas, however, seemed relatively calm. It was an odd combination of suspects, especially partners in crime. But then, many odd people had entered the Blauwe-Mans County Police Station. This pair would be no different from the rest. But, the chief thought, odd combinations often have, shall we say, different stories. Barvan tapped his door with his knuckles, his eyes trained on Evi. His first victim. The chief gestured to Evi, whose eyes widened. Evian van Beek? Evi bit her lip. It looked as if the girl was blinking back tears. "Ja," she answered. De Vries nodded approvingly. "De tide is here. Komen Evian, the chief said, clapping his hands. Levi looked desperately at Lucas, and then at the chief. Alsjeblieft, een moment? She asked in a small voice. Lucas gave Levi an alarmed look as the chief processed what the suspect had just said. De Vries scowled, but gave in. Prima, the chief muttered, his eyebrows furrowing. Fine, Levi repeated in English, sighing. She turned to Lucas. I'm telling the truth, she said sternly. It's the right thing to do. Lucas looked angry for a moment, but then softened. His cheeks were red. Fine, he spat. But if we get out of here with no mark on our permanent record, you can thank me. So you are still... Levi stopped, eyes glancing toward Barvin. At least I will have done something for the good of the world. I am, as they say, avenging his death, if that is right context. Levi lowered her voice. We killed him. Jail time, nothing, will take that fact away. Sergeant Patrick Shea stepped out from the open room. His party was being held. He had been leaning on the doorsill and listening to the pair's conversation since they had been seated. Sergeant Shea nodded to the chief. Meneer De Vries, Shea addressed the chief. Barvan raised an eyebrow. Ja? He asked. The sergeant gestured to the teens. Shea turned and gave Lucas and Levi a small smile. Then, in crisp English, he said, These are our killers, sir. Evian van Beek and Lucas Hoysk, convicted of the manslaughter of Pressy Baver. The plunderer's bank robbery and waltzing have a lot in common. Both have defined rhythms, and they're better with a partner. After waiting my turn, like an everyday customer, I handed my note and a paper sack to the blonde girl behind the counter while pulling back my sport coat to show her the butt of my pistol. The note read, This is a robbery. Remain calm so no one gets hurt. Fill the sack from your drawer. Have a nice day. When she scanned my note, her eyes bulged and flicked from side to side. Her frightened blue peepers filled with disbelief as she stared at me to see if this was a prank. I smiled like a friend. Please fill it up. With trembling fingers, she stuffed bills into the sack as if she'd win a prize for the fullest bag. The gorilla behind me noticed something wrong. Maybe the sweat-gouging channels through the quivering blonde's rouge tipped him off. He grunted and grabbed me in a bear hug, pinning my arms. My marine training kicked in and I stomped the arch of his foot with the sharp leather heel of my polished Oxfords. He winced and loosened his grip. This gave me enough slack to reach behind and twist his balls. He yipped like an injured puppy and let go, slowly sinking to the floor. The bank patrons turned to stare at the commotion. Unsure what was happening, I reached through the teller's wicket and yanked the half-filled sack of money from the blonde's jittery hands as my assailant rolled on the floor, grabbing his crotch. One of the suits in the back reached for a phone. Time to go. I strolled out of the bank before anyone attempted to jump me. Outside the bank, I wanted to run, but nothing attracts attention more than a man running from a bank with a bag in his hand. The alarm clanged, and I turned towards the bank like the other pedestrians, plastering a puzzled look on my face. A siren wailed in the distance. Sweat beaded my forehead, and I lengthened my strides short of a power walk. When I reached the corner, white exhaust flowed from the red Edsel coupe, and its big V8 growled, ready to whisk me to safety. I jumped in the passenger seat, and Marge drove away at 30 miles per hour. 2 police cruisers screamed past us in the other lane. Now, we'd have to ditch this flashy car in case anyone noticed it fleeing the scene. Marge and I have been robbing banks since I got out of the Marines in '53. My posting to Korea separated us for 3 agonizing years. And when I got back to the States, we promised each other we'd never be apart again. Although we talked about it, we never got married. We both felt that a piece of government parchment would not make us love each other any more than we did. When our cash ran low, we'd find a suitable bank in a small town, make an unauthorized withdrawal, and live comfortably on the proceeds for a few months. As long as we didn't take too much or go to the well too often, the local cops forgot us, and the FBI had enough problems with organized crime to worry about a small-town bank robbery. We never hit the same town twice. Our life between jobs was quiet and measured, spending the winter in Florida, soaking up the sun like other tourists. We danced every Saturday night and fished the local lakes. Marge loved the fall colors, so we spent September in New England before turning south for the winter. I don't remember the name of the town in Minnesota when we ran low on cash. While Marge gassed up the car, I got us a table in the Moosehead Diner. Over the blue plate special of corned beef and hash, I decided I wanted to go fishing. Margie, I've been thinking, it would be a shame to be in northern Minnesota and not go walleye fishing. How about we rent a cabin after this job and go fishing for the weekend? Marge placed her napkin on the table and pursed her lips. Okay, Harry, but all the cabins are probably rented. I reached for her hand. This is the end of the season, and we'll find a cabin somewhere, just for the weekend. Then we'll head for Vermont. She squeezed my hand and ran her thumb over my knuckles. We'll need some bait. I hadn't thought that far ahead. We'll stop at a bait shop and pick up some minnows. Or, if you'd rather, you can watch me fish. She removed her cat's eyeglasses with the fake rhinestones and leaned over the table. Not on your life, Buster. You fish. I fish. And I'll catch bigger fish. Just you watch me. I finished my coffee, left a $10 bill on the table, and wiped the crumbs off my tie. I'm going to the little boy's room, and then to work. As I walked across the street to the Imperial Bank, Marge parked the car around the corner. We took the north road out of town towards Canada and doubled back south on a series of gravel concession roads. Navigation was Marge's job. When we hit the interstate, we turned east towards New England. The cops must have figured it out, or got lucky. They'd had 10 years to learn out our pattern. When we turned onto the interstate, 2 police cruisers, nose to nose, blocked our path to freedom. Blue and red lights flashed, and cops leaned across the hoods, pointing shotguns at us. 2 more cruisers pulled out of a side road and blocked our retreat. Marge slowed as we approached the roadblock and parked on the shoulder. A cop with a bullhorn yelled, "Get out of the car and lay on the ground." Marge turned off the ignition and gripped the wheel with hands at 10 and 2 while staring out the windshield. "Goodbye, Harry." I wiped a tear from my eye. "Goodbye, Marge." I drew my pistol and shot her through the ear. Blood spattered the windshield and side window as she slumped on the driver's door. I put the pistol in my mouth and pulled the trigger. "This is a robbery." "This is a robbery," I said calmly, pushing my golden hair behind my shoulder. "Bring me everything." "Ma'am, Just do it," I told the bank teller firmly, giving him a look. It wasn't a glare exactly, more like one of those looks your mom gives you do something wrong. I wasn't threatening him. I didn't even carry a weapon with me. But he was going to do what I say. I stared into his gold green eyes with my baby blue ones, insisting he did what I asked. See, I didn't give orders. I never had to. People, especially men, just listened. This man, however, with his long black hair and mysterious green gold eyes, was stronger than most. He hadn't set off the alarm. He was considering it, though, his eyes darting to it nervously, then back at me. He scanned my figure, not with desire, but as if he was searching for the weapon I didn't have. We stood like this for many minutes, no one else taking note of what was happening. I studied him closely, deciding he was quite handsome. His nose was straight, and he had these beautiful dimple marks in his chin and cheeks. His long black hair brushed his back, and he was several inches taller than me. Not that I minded. It was actually better this way. "Bring me everything," I repeated in a whisper. I urged him on, pushing him quietly with my gaze and stance. I wasn't pushy, but I was confident. No one had resisted me before. Why should I expect it to stop now? Around us, the world continued, heels clacking against the floor and boots thudding, some heavy, some light. I heard buttons being pressed, and a tiny ding of approval as a loan went through. The man didn't move. He looked at me seriously, considering my request. "Bring me everything." I repeated in a whisper. His eyes widened slightly, but still he didn't move. I could tell I was close to getting what I wanted. He was almost broken. He dragged a hand through his hair. He knew he should alarm someone. He didn't know if I had a weapon or not, or maybe he did. He glanced around, looking for anyone who might be an accomplice. Several burly, suit-wearing men stood around talking, occasionally glancing at me. Now they had desire in their eyes. I was a respectable woman, with curves in all the right places. I turned my hip slightly, just enough to show myself off. The man thought I was giving a signal, especially when one of the other men took a step towards us. I smiled one last time. "Please?" I added sweetly. The man left to get what I wanted. Everything. Several people stopped him to ask what he was doing, but all he did was point at me and then continued. One of these people came over to me and asked what I was doing. I told her I wanted everything. She just nodded, blankly. Weakling. Soon, I had the whole bank wrapped around my little finger. The man came back, pushing a cart full of money. I peered inside and dug around, making sure they weren't tricking me. I glanced at the man and smiled at him seductively. He smiled back, winking. He was letting me know he wasn't under my control. I raised an eyebrow at him, ignoring the lusty stares the men were giving me. He raised an eyebrow back. I rolled my eyes. "Give me the cart," I said haughtily. No, I gave him a look, one that said, "Don't defy me." The man smirked. "You said you wanted everything," I smirked back. "Then come. Allow me to rob you of your job, your soul, your dignity. Only if I may steal yours." That's when I hear it. The tiny, lilting whisper in my head, urging me to love him, to listen to him. I smiled at him, knowing his secrets. "Come," I whispered. "Come to me." The man smiled and took a step closer, leaving the cart. I didn't care about the cart anymore. All I wanted was him. I swam in his beautiful green-gold eyes. I could feel him fall deeper into mine. He tugged at the cart, pulling it with him as he advanced on me. My heart beat eagerly, and I leaned forward. The part of my brain still sane was terrified, knowing what this man could do to me. It excited me. The man was so enticing, with full, soft lips and thick hair I wanted to run my hands through. He scanned my figure again, undressing me with his eyes, no longer looking for weapons. I gave him a sly look, then turned around, leading him outside. I bent over, opening the trunk, and I felt his eyes on me the entire time. Gentlemanlike, he helped me unload the cart, hiding the money in the fake walls. I stuffed several bills in my bra in case he tried to pull something. I got the feeling he would, his voice, whispered in my head, just as mine whispered in his. I excited him, and he tried to pull me against his chest, but I only smirked and pulled away, climbing into the driver's seat. I allowed him to sit shotgun. I was already several miles down the highway before anyone at the bank realized what had happened. It was too late now. I already had the money. I glanced at the man. We had the money. The man noticed me looking at him. His hand slid over the seat, resting on my thigh. I glanced at him slyly. What? You looking to have some fun? Of course. But ma'am, you never allowed me to finish my sentence earlier. I frowned. I had no idea what he was talking about. The man sighed. I was going to say, I know your secret. I raised an eyebrow, pushing my hair back. Oh? You're a siren, I smirked. Not quite. I am what you are. The man's eyes widened nervously, like a cornered animal. No? Oh yes. The man drew his hand back, knowing he now had no power. I had robbed him blind. He thought he had control, that he had power, that he had strength. He didn't. All he had was an illusion. I laughed, and without pulling over, slid over into his lap. Now give me everything. The man, who had been excited minutes before, only looked terrified. We were cruising down the interstate with no one at the wheel. I only grinned. This was going to be fun. Accusation. Pounding the tarmac, she bolted down the garden path like an Olympic champion at the start gun. She quickened her pace to an all-out sprint, whilst the springing, graceful steps of 20 miles earlier had long since disappeared. The slapping noise of her flip-flops resonated around the vandalized walls of the housing estate with a clanging echo. She didn't know where she was, nor did she know where she was heading, but she knew she had to get far away from him. Flashing in her eyes, an image of a wedding dress consumed her thoughts. She wanted to tear it and rip it up and throw it at him. Throw it at the man that she could never marry. For God's sake, I'm only 16. I can't get married, she thought. Tears blinded her, and she turned, running as quickly as her long legs could carry her. She bolted down the alley. The pounding noise of her flip-flops reverberated off the walls of the alley, along with a clanging echo that matched her heart, throbbing inside her chest, filling up with acid. Her legs couldn't go on anymore. There she saw it. A barn. It blossomed on the hill amid the grass and the meadow flowers, as if one day it sprung up from some precious seed. I have to go in there, just for a little while, and I will go back home soon, she thought. Opening the door, the smell hit her first as she lugged open the unwieldy, russet-painted door adorned with its tired hinges that creaked like the moaning of cantankerous old men. collapsing down. Her legs couldn't carry her anymore. They were filled with toxins, lost in the rhythmic percussions of her steady breathing. She closed her eyes and imagined herself in college and getting a degree. However, that dream seemed so unrealistic, invading her steady breaths. A sound of murmuring pervaded the ambiance, and it was coming from outside. Lifting herself up, she carried herself forward and looked out of the cracks in the door. In the middle, a man was begging on his knees. She saw that his face was bearing with the congealed blood, and his clothes were in an utter mess. However, they showed him no mercy. Surrounding him, a tall man was clutching onto his shirt and ripping it apart. In front of him, a much slender man gave him a red eye. His left eye was swollen. He couldn't be seeing a thing out of that, and his face was more purple than brown. She couldn't look. Her eyes widened, and lip trembled. Plummeting onto the floor, the man laid there. He was dead. Calling out from a distance, she could hear a voice telling them to bury him there. Nevertheless, she couldn't see who it was and couldn't seem to recognize this voice. Just like minions, all the men dug holes with shovels and buried the man, leaving no evidence behind. Tears burst forth like water from a dam spilling across her face. The muscle of her chin trembled like a small child. Salty drops fell from her chin, drenching her kurti. Many thoughts pervaded into her mind. She had never seen these people before, even though she lived in a small village in Pakistan. Going towards the way she came, she ran back home. I can't be here anymore, she thought. Howling wildly, the rain lashes the concrete breeze that made her lose control. She ran through a maze of buildings and winding side streets as the sky rumbled, and heavy rain bounced off the cobblestones. A storm smothered the sun, graying the world around her. Drops of rain beat against her skin like hammers. Reaching home, she ran up to her apartment and banged on the door. Getting inside, she ran to her room and closed the door. Overpowering all her emotions, the face of the dead man haunted her. Playing the story over and over again, she fell asleep and let her thoughts turn all her dreams into nightmares. Waking up in the morning, she turned on the news and waited. There is a kind of waiting that feels like gentle, onshore breezes kissing salty stones. Nevertheless, this is not what she was feeling today. The news finished, and there was nothing about this missing man. How strange, she thought. Months go on, and there is no sign of this man. Befuddlement infiltrated into her mind. Who was this man? And most importantly, why was he dead? After months of waiting, she saw it. Sitting there on the sofa, she saw it on the news. It was exactly the same man that got killed, and apparently he was missing. So they didn't know that he's dead, she thought. Her mouth pursed and slightly loosed. She looked up at the TV, her eyes fixed, as if this was the only thing that mattered in this world. She had to go, running forward. She had to stop. She wheezes as her burning lungs gasp for air. Her legs feel numb and unsteady, painfully sore. Her throat felt dry, so uncomfortably dry. Clothes' long, blonde-brown hair were clinging onto the tarmac, no different than if she runs through a rainstorm. Unable to go on, she stopped running, gasping for air, but she knew she had to go on. At the corner of the road, there lay walls as thick as the medieval castle, and windows almost as mean. There's no flicker of light within, and the thick wooden doors were closed. Going into the police station, she felt a soft panic growing inside of her. The steps she took were just increasing this amount. It will fade if I back away, but then I have to do this all again another time. It will grow if I let these thoughts swirl into a vortex of stupidity, eating their own tail. Or I can breathe real slow. Let the thoughts leak into the ether and be the real boss of myself, she thought. Approaching the officer, she sat down and told him about what she had seen that night. She told him about the beating and about them burying the dead man. Walking past him, a tall man looked at her, and suddenly she remembered him. It was the same man that clung to his shirt that night. Getting up off her seat, she pointed at the tall man. Sweat trickled down her face and etched marks onto her skin. But she had to do this. Miss, I think you are getting a bit hysterical here. This man works with us, and he would never do such a thing, said the officer. Whist. He examined her up and down. He couldn't understand her. She looked like she was telling the truth. But Hassan couldn't have done this. I do trust him, thought the officer, and he was part of the Commander League, and is soon to get promoted into officer. Telling her to wait in the courtroom, he dismisses her so that he could talk to other members of the department. Just stepping into the courtroom is making her breathing rapid and shallow. She can feel her pulse pounding in her temples. It's a relief to get to the chair. Otherwise I would have tripped, she thought. Now only silence lingers in the air. She shivers in the claustrophobic common room and waits for the signal. But a small sigh of anxiety leaps out of her mouth. Tersely, her eyes flicker to the building's whist. She bit her nails to the core, beckoning her to come in. The same officer takes her back into the office. However, they go further in, and it's like nowhere she has actually ever seen before. The fear sits on her like a pillow over her mouth and nose. Doubting her decisions, she tells herself that she had made the right decision. Once again, fear found her. It spoke to her in its cackling voice. It told her legs to go weak, her stomach to lurch, and her heart to ache, as that is what happened to her. She knew she had to keep going, because the truth was just seconds away. Stepping into an exquisite office, she could see the posters hanging and the files stacked up neatly. Getting introduced to the other officers, she sat down, and in the process, she saw the slender man and recognized him immediately, because he was the one who punched the dead man, and instantaneously, she got off her seat. This is the man who punched the dead man. Laughing hysterically, all the officers got up off their seats and surrounded her, just like they did with the dead man. The officer who she met first started talking. "I believe that it is you who killed him," said the officer. "Isn't that right, Commander Abad?" "Yes," replied the commander. The voice sounded so familiar in her head, but why, she thought. Then it clicked in. He was voice who told them to bury the dead man. Feeling an overwhelming feeling of disgust, she stood up and went towards the commander. "You did all of this," she snarled. "No, I didn't. Officers, can you please put her behind bars? And that is an order," replied the commander. Locking up her hands, the officers grabbed into her shoulders and took her away. Trying to justify her case, she had no luck. The constricted feeling grew inside of her, as if she was strangled by just the air about her. She glances upward to the surface, and her heart rate rises. The voice of caution whispers softly not to rise so fast, but it can't break through the scream for unfiltered rays and fresh air. From the moment she saw it, it repulsed her. These walls cannot hold a prayer, nor can hold a spirit. And I belong here, she thought. Surrounded by 4 white walls, there was nothing else to do but stare at them, to look at the paint that had started to chip off as time passed, or gouged by other prisoners. Anything to pass time, slowly going mad, theorizing absurd meanings from the wall's blank stare. And this is what I would be doing here, she thought, getting thrown into prison. She screamed and shouted like there was no tomorrow, and flung her arms across the cell. I can't stay here, she thought, and not for something I didn't even do. I did not kill the man. It wasn't me, she shouted. But no one heard her. No one ever did. Murder in a dream. Halvar sat in his office, browsing the police file of suspects and cursing his brain for not remembering anything regarding the incident. The doctors told him the blow to his head was severe. It gave him a concussion, after all, and that it might take time for his memory to come back, if it did at all. Hall, without turning his eyes from the computer screen, he waved a hand. "Come in, Siegfried." His assistant walked into the office, placing a hand on Halvar's shoulder. "How are you?" "Still can't remember anything," he said, scanning the faces of every known criminal in Norway. He recognized a few of them, having captured them himself, but none rang a bell as to whom might have killed two of his friends and placed one in a coma. He's got to be here somewhere. Hall, you should rest, Siegfried said, placing a cup on his desk. Steam rose from it, spreading an invigorating scent of coffee. We are looking into every possible avenue. I have to regain my memory, he said, scrolling further. He had to. It was the only way. He must have seen the killer just before the hit on the head knocked him out cold. His mind held the only real evidence they had, the only evidence to help turn suspicion off of Halvar himself. Siegfried sighed and retracted her hand. We talked to Olaf, the studio owner, again. He said he left the place early that evening and didn't see anyone but you and your friends coming in. Nobody else was scheduled for practice either. The single security camera caught no one else entering the building. That camera's position is awkward, Halvar said, rubbing his eyes. He hadn't slept in a day. He didn't like what sleep brought. The killer could have entered through the back or by the window. Did Olaf tell you about his back door? How he's too cheap to have it repaired? Anyone could enter. In fact, could the man himself be responsible? He did complain often about the noise of Halvar and his band playing, even though they paid to rent his studio for practice. Hall, I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. I know how close you were with them, how much music meant to you. I hope that Bjarka makes it, and I hope you get some rest. Halvar sighed and listened to Siegfrieda's footsteps leaving the office. The cup of coffee rested on the desk, smelling heavenly. He turned to say thank you, but his assistant was gone. Instead, he noticed the pictures on the office walls, his formal detective license, a photo with the whole police department for Christmas 2 years ago, and a framed picture of him and his 3 friends playing live at a local festival. 2 of them were dead now, 1 in a coma, the result of some lunatic bursting into the studio and killing everybody. Halvar himself survived by sheer luck, it would seem. I'll find out who did this, he thought, turning back to the screen. And no law or moral code can save them from me when I do. He spent the rest of the night searching through the files, as well as his memory, both seemingly void of the information he sought. Eventually, sleep caught up with Halvar, and with it came the nightmare. Each night since the incident, he had been having roughly the same dream. It was almost as if his mind was trying to tell him through dreams what he couldn't remember consciously. Halvar got to relive the murder of his friends every night for the past 2 weeks. He got to see every bloody detail, but never the killer's face. That detail always eluded him, and with each dream, he thought he was getting closer to the truth. Each time, the nightmare would reveal a bit more of what happened. That was if his mind wasn't just making everything up out of trauma. In the dream, he was often in the killer's shoes, after all. But he could never see his face. This night, the dream started as usual. Right in the middle of it, and from the point of view of the killer. Halvar saw himself as the murderer, picking up his guitar and crushing his friend's head with it. They were in the middle of practice and were stunned at the sudden outburst of violence by the intruding killer. Before anyone could react, Halvar smashed the heads of all 3 of his band colleagues with his own guitar. Then the dream shifted, where he could see outside from himself. How he got hit on the head too, by a figure without a face. The prosecutor then ran away, and when Halvar wanted to follow, the figure disappeared into the shadows. Halvar woke up, sweating and breathing heavily. He looked around and noticed he had fallen asleep in his office. The place was dark, no light coming from the hallway. Everyone must have left already. He grabbed a pen and paper and wrote down everything he could remember from the dream, recording every detail. The drawer by his desk was filled with accounts from his dream, and he used them to correlate the event, searching for consistent patterns and hints. As incredible as it seemed, his dreams were the only clues he had. But he couldn't share them with his colleagues. They would never take it seriously. The killer used my guitar, Halvar murmured, comparing tonight's dream with the others. But the last thing I remember was playing on my guitar. Then, nothing. So, whoever did it, I must have trusted them to let them have my guitar. The evidence found at the crime scene clearly pointed at Halvar's guitar as the murder weapon. It had blood and tissue of all 4 of them on its body, all found on one side, suggesting that the killer used it as a club to repeatedly strike at each one. The guitar's body was solid steel and hard plastic, and it cracked under the brutal hits, but did not break apart, surprisingly. So the killer must have known how strong the instrument was, so he could perform precise strike with it and not have it break in the middle of his assault. That would create an opening for the others to defend themselves. The only person that Halvar would entrust his instrument to, and who would know so much about it, other than his band friends, was Olaf himself, the studio owner. Halvar even once took lessons from the man, who showed him a few tricks on the guitar from his heyday as a roadie. It wasn't rational to think that Bjarka would take the guitar, kill the other 2, attempt to kill Halvar, and then knock himself out. How would he do that? And it was just as absurd to think that Halvar himself did it, as was the unspoken suspicion. How would he swing the guitar at himself, knocking himself out with it? The angles didn't match, but the blood and the concussion did. Somebody else must have been present there that night. And the more Halvar thought about it, the more he suspected Olaf. The studio was his. He had access to the camera. The band knew and trusted him. He did complain about the noise, but was that reason enough to attempt a quadruple homicide? Or was there something else? A form of jealousy against Halvar and the band? Olaf did say that he never had a chance to be in a band, but that it was his greatest wish. Halvar checked the clock. It was something past 3 a.m. He considered, looking at the photo of him and his friends. Then he left his office. Olaf's house was next to his studio. It was part of the same building complex, just on the other side, so the owner had privacy as well as quick access to the place. Halvar sat in his car, parked outside the man's house. There was a light turned on inside. Olaf was the one that found us, Halvar thought. He came into the studio and called the police. In the report, the man said he had heard shouts and how the music suddenly stopped. So he had gone to check. The more Halvar considered, the more sense it made. The man pretended to have stumbled upon the murder scene, to have an alibi. Halvar waited in his car, considering whether he should confront the man, considering if he could even do it. As he waited outside of Olaf's house, the pain in his head from the blow returned. Halvar took some painkillers and watched the window, wanting to catch Olaf in some act that would rat him out. In a whirlwind of thoughts, and with a headache pounding, Halvar must have fallen in a pill-induced sleep, as suddenly his mind was back at the incident. This time, he saw more of it. "That sounds terrible, Hal," Bjarke said, grimacing on the drums. "Are you sure you can play the guitar, mate?" Halvar ignored the remark and focused on playing the solo. They were working on a new song, and it was a pain to get it right. "Sounds to me like he's butchering somebody," Damus, the bassist, commented. "Must be the stress at work, I reckon." They laughed. Typical guy talk. Halvar tried his best, but failed. His fingers were just too slow. The solo too technical and complex. His mind was sluggish, indeed from stress at work. There was a dangerous killer on the loose, and they had finally gotten a lead. Halvar just wanted to relax and let go for a few hours with his buddies. But all he could think of was the brutality of the recent murders. "Hey, we're going to get something to eat," Bjarke said. "You want something, Hal?" "No," Halvar said. "I'm good." He just wanted to get the damn solo right. "All right then," Bjarke said. "But don't you try and steal my roles when we come back." They left. Halvar kept practicing. Then Olaf entered the studio. "Hey, mate," the older man said, wearing his long gray hair in a tail. "Sound like you're having some trouble." "Yeah," Halvar said. "I can't do this transition here. It's too fast for me." Halvar showed what he meant by playing the part at half speed. Olaf nodded. "I see. Can I try?" "Sure," Halvar sighed. He handed the man his guitar. Knock yourself out. I'll knock you out. With my veteran skill, the man said, and took the guitar. The dream then changed to Halvar being in the killer's shoes and butchering everybody, until seeing himself in third person again, being hit by some man with no face. Halvar ran after the man, and this time he caught him in a corner. The man had long hair. Halvar jolted awake. He was sitting in his car, parked outside of Olaf's home. The light in the house had turned off. It's him, he thought, breathing heavily. He did it. Halvar got out of the car and walked to the studio entrance. He had the key, as he and his friends were regulars. It was the little hours of the morning, and there was nobody outside, not even a stray dog. Halvar unlocked the door and removed the police tape, entering the crime scene. He knew that the studio and Olaf's house were connected by a passage for practicality. Halvar used the light on his phone to make his way through the dark interior. If it really was you, Olaf? Halvar hurried through the passage, entering the man's living quarters. He'd been there once or twice when Olaf invited them over for a drink. Building his alibi. Plotting, even then, Halvar crossed the living room and climbed the stairs to the man's bedroom. He didn't think of what his plan was. He just wanted to have a look at the man, to see his murderous face. As he came to the bedroom, where he saw the light coming before, Halvar paused. He heard weeping from inside. His heart pounded like a drum, and he burst into the room. Feeling guilt for what you did, the man, lying under the blankets, jumped up in shock. Halvar turned on the light and noticed he had taken out his gun on instinct. Olaf gazed at him with wide eyes, red, as if from crying. "What? Don't deny it! You did it!" Halvar shouted, his hand trembling. "I saw you! It was you!" The man's face was twisted in a mixture of shock and fear. "What are you talking about?" "I saw you in my dream," Halvar said. "You took my guitar, and..." The man was crying. There were candles placed on his windowsill, alongside pictures of Halvar and his friends. The two that had been killed had a rosary around them. He was grieving? "What's all this?" Halvar asked, pointing at the pictures. "They were my friends too," Olaf said. "Your band reminded me of when I was young." His gaze focused on the gun in Halvar's hands. "You think I did it?" It wasn't a question, but a statement. One in which Halvar wasn't so sure anymore. He looked into the man's eyes and saw sadness underneath all the shock and betrayal. "I can't prove it, Hall," Olaf said, sniffing. "But by God, I'm not the man you should be pointing that gun at." "Who then?" Halvar shouted. "Who did it? Who killed my friends and nearly killed me?" He pointed the gun at the man's head. Olaf began weeping. "The guitar was in your hands when I found you." Yes, the killer wanted to confuse the forensics by framing one of us. No one else came or left the studio. Hall, what are you saying? Olaf glanced at the gun again, then at Halvar. Are you here to kill me too? Halvar balked. Olaf pissed himself, a dark spot appearing on the bed sheets. The man was genuinely afraid of him. Halvar suddenly felt deep shame, and he lowered the gun, running out of the room and out of the house. No, it can't be, he thought. If Olaf didn't do it, who then? He started the car and drove back home, where he took a bottle of scotch and began drinking. He demanded from his mind to remember all of it, to remember things clearly, without dreams and illusions. His head began hurting, but he didn't take the pills. They would only distract his mind. Halvar emptied the bottle and paced around his room until he collapsed in a corner and wept for his friends. Once again, sleep took over, his body and mind exhausted. This time, the dream picked off as his friends returned with the food. Where have you been? Halvar asked. They were gone for nearly 2 hours. Bjarka giggled like a schoolgirl. We went to get food. They all had red faces and were snickering like teenagers. Have you been smoking weed? No, Damus said. They snickered some more. Halvar sighed. We were supposed to practice tonight. You should chill, Detective Oyolf, their lead singer said. You can't play that guitar anyway. He turned to the other two. Hey, maybe we should cut his hair. If he can't play, then he's not a true metal fan and shouldn't have long hair. The three laughed, obviously talking gibberish, but Halvar, being frustrated by his stressful job, having to deal with murderers and psychopaths all day long, just wanted to lose himself in the music with his friends, but for some reason couldn't get the creative juices flowing, and had enough. Something snapped. He grabbed his guitar and began playing. The guys turned to him. Whoa, look at Hall. He's on fire. Halvar played the solo with fury. He struck every note on the spot. Yeah, man, that's the thing. Then he came to the hard part. He followed Olaf's instructions and sailed through it, racing to the finale. Seems Hall's been practicing while we were smoking. Halvar's muscles tensed as he got to where he always failed. He struck the notes, one by one, the pick flying over the strings. But his fury was too much. He broke a string, and the guys giggled. Halvar smacked Bjarka straight in his laughing face with the guitar. The man fell over, like a chopped log. Then he hit Damus, who was too stoned to register what was going on. Halvar repeatedly hit the man's head until it cracked, and the guitar strings vibrated from the impact, playing a sinister echo. Oyolf wanted to run away, but Halvar chopped him down by hitting his side first, and then smashing the man's head. Breathing heavily, feeling all his frustration boiling in him, Halvar screamed and headbanged into the guitar's body repeatedly until he collapsed to the floor, unconscious. The dream shifted outside himself, and he could see Olaf stumbling upon the aftermath, mortified. Halvar jumped up on his feet as the doorbell rang. His fists were clenched, as though he still held the guitar, and he breathed heavily, confused. He was at home. He just woke up from a dream. Someone was at the door. Did I really kill them? Halvar ran a hand through his sweaty hair and walked to the door. He took one deep breath and opened it. It was Sigfrida, with 2 other officers by her side, Halvar's colleagues. "Hall?" she said, her voice painful. "Yeah?" he groaned. Bjarka woke up. "We have some questions. The invisible murder." "Start from the beginning," I sigh, and turn back the needle of time to... What time was it? I almost chuckle. I was so desperately watching the clock tick by, and now I can barely remember what it said. 9 o'clock, I think. I try to remember everything exactly as it was. Any small detail could help. Could be the distant tapping sound, or the odd stain on a shirt, or the scrap of paper that cracks open the case. I know that. I've read the books. It happened around 9 p.m. I was sitting in the security center, doing my job, when a man walked across the camera on the 5th floor. He was just walking down the hallway, and then I take a breath. A thick layer of dust clings to my dark finger as I drag it across the desk, my mind elsewhere. In my head, I'm back in that room with all the screens and the uncomfortable squished chair that I hate. My eyes honed in on the screen, just to my left. "Take your time," coaxes the detective. He looks down at me patiently from across the rickety old desk, and then another man walked into the frame with a knife in his hand. It happened so fast, I didn't see it coming. He stabbed the man in the chest. Another steadying breath. My fingers move to my chest of their own accord, tracing the spot where the knife penetrated. There was blood everywhere. There really was. I didn't know there could be so much from only a small stab wound. Staining his beige polo shirt, saturating the already blood-red carpet, dripping from the shimmering silver blade. What happened then? The security camera went black. I searched the other screens for the man, but he was nowhere. It's like he just what? I chuckle humorlessly at the absurdity of it all. It's like he just disappeared, I mutter. I know how crazy I sound, but still I stare into space, watching the dust particles drift in the glow of what small bit of street light seeps through the broken blinds. This room must not have been used in years. No wonder I've never noticed it before. "Is that all?" the detective asks. It happened very fast. And it had been fast. So very, very fast. I could have blinked and missed it. What would have happened then? The detective stares almost aggressively into my face, trying to catch a lie, but he won't find one. I would never lie about something so important. "Mr. Kessler, is it?" "Yes, sir." "Mr. Kessler, my officers are still searching the building at this time, but at the present moment, There is no evidence that a murder took place. My stomach drops. What? There is nothing unusual at the supposed crime scene you pointed out to us, and the security footage was of no assistance, he says. What? How is that possible? I saw it happen, I say, nearly shouting. It's hard to read him. But if I had to place his furrowed eyebrows and calm manner, I would say there was a twinge of bewilderment and perhaps a touch of curiosity. There is no security footage. It was missing when we got to the security center. You didn't happen to take it, did you? What? Of course not, I yell, indignation filling my bones. Why in hell would I steal the security footage? As far as I know, you were the only one in the security center after when you say the murder took place. His nonchalant manner drives me up the wall. I know he's a policeman, but how could anyone seem to care so little about a murder? Does he not believe me? But it wasn't me. I enunciate each word as if speaking to a child. Why would I get rid of the footage? I do not know, Mr. Kessler. That is exactly the answer I was attempting to obtain from you. The detective pauses thoughtfully. There was nothing at the scene of the crime. No blood, no weapon, no body. Nothing that even seems slightly suspicious. There are no missing persons reports of an elderly man in the city right now. The security footage you claim to have seen is gone. Yes, I know. You're a broken record. I roll my eyes, frustrated. Why do you expect me to believe that a murder took place in this building tonight? He asks, beginning to look annoyed and frustrated. I almost open my mouth to shout, but stop. With a start, I realize that it's a fair question. He doesn't believe me. Why would anyone? It seems so unlikely that a murder could have occurred in the first place, aside from my account. No evidence at all. Nothing except my word. And the detective has no reason to trust that. A new and cold fear rises inside me. Is someone about to get away with murder because I saw it? I mumble, unconvincingly. I only process how pathetic it sounds as it leaves my lips. Mr. Kessler, I am going to write in my report that this was a false alarm. I believe you are tired or somehow otherwise mentally distressed, and you didn't see what you think you saw. I don't know how to react. At first, I'm angry. How could the detective so easily disregard this? How could I possibly make this up? But the rest of me knows he has a point. It was a mind trick, Mr. Kessler. You're wasting my time and the time of all of my colleagues. He raises his voice, and it pulses with the kindling of anger. Go home. Get some sleep. Don't try to pull something like this again. And just be grateful you're not being charged. Now I know how to feel. I didn't try to do this. This is not my fault. And if there's even a chance I'm telling the truth, shouldn't they at least find out? The detective turns and walks toward the door behind him. But as he reaches for the tarnished golden doorknob, He hesitates. Do you recall what the so-called culprit looked like? He inquires, turning to face me again, with a look of sheer curiosity, and maybe even a trace of amusement. What's wrong with him? Didn't he just say I imagined it? Why does it matter if you think I just made it up, detective? I say, feeling snarky. I can still charge you, I sigh, attempting to recall the man with the knife. Graying hair, black t-shirt, maybe 5'9". The detective frowns. Really? 5'9"? Yeah. Why? Come on, I look at least 6 feet. The detective chuckles. Oops, the corpse in the village. It was Harper's 21st birthday, and we went out for drinks. My treat, of course. My birthday was a few weeks ago, and we celebrated together in secret, since she wasn't allowed to actually go to a bar yet. We've been friends since preschool. We were always at each other's houses. We recently bought a house in a smaller city of Minnesota. Harper was having the time of her life right now. SAS was dancing with this guy. He kind of gave off weird vibes. But I didn't want to destroy Harper's night by being overly protective. So I just watched them closely. The town we lived in was so small, it gained the nickname the Village. I didn't want to drink too heavily, in case I needed to step in and get Harper away from the guy she was dancing with. She was laughing and smiling. She was just so happy, and I was happy for her. It has been a long few years for her. This has been the happiest I've seen Harper since losing her mom a few years back. Her mother was in a plane crash, and it destroyed Harper. She started drinking and smoking, but I finally got her to stop. It wasn't easy, though. It was super tough. Harper still has those days where she will just lock herself in her room. But I check on her every hour, seeing if she needs anything. The guy Harper was dancing with went to the restroom, I think. So I went to tall with her. Good birthday so far? I asked her. Yes. Thank you so much, Hadley. The music is awesome, and the drinks are very tasty. She replied. I smiled at her and decided to order some food. I ordered Piggly Wiggly fries and a burger for myself, and pizza and wings for Harper. I went back to the table to wait for our food, and Harper was at the bar flirting with the bartender. The bartender was returning her flirtations happily. He seemed sweet enough. He didn't have as much as a weird aura as the other guy she was dancing with previously. The said guy came back and brought Harper back to the dance floor, and I was alert and ready to strike if need be. He wasn't being rough with Harper or anything, but I didn't trust him at all. I have always been the protective friend, and I know I may seem like I'm too protective, but I care about my friends. The sadness on the bartender's face was heartbreaking. He seemed to like Harper really well, but that jerk took her away from the bartender. The waitress brought our food out, and I waved Harper over, and she skipped over happily. We ate our food, and she told me she was ready to leave. I nodded, and we ate, just talking and laughing. But guess who was watching? I tried to ignore him, but that anxious feeling was still there. We finished eating and left. We took a taxi just to be safe. We arrived home, and I helped her inside and to the bathroom so she wouldn't fall over. I left so she could shower, and I made sure the doors and windows were locked. I felt safer being home, but that guy's face and his aura was still haunting me. After Harper's shower, we cut her cake and enjoyed a piece with cold glasses of milk. Harper wanted us to watch a movie, so that's what we did. We talked more than we watched the movie. She told me how she really felt a connection with the bartender. I told her I could sense their connection, and it was a deep one. I told her that I hope they would cross paths again. She also told me how that the guy she was dancing with made her uncomfortable. I told her he did give off a weird vibe, but I didn't want to ruin her night. She told me it would have been just fine if I had mentioned how weird he made me feel. Around 5 in the morning, we decided to go to bed. Harper was tired, and I was tired, so we were ready for bed. Harper had fallen asleep with ease, but I seemed to struggle. I just couldn't shake the negative feeling I had. That guy was still haunting my thoughts. That guy triggered something in me, and I couldn't handle it. I ended up falling asleep, but not without nightmares. They were horrible, gory, and just flat out terrifying. I woke up all sweaty, and my heart was racing. I have always had nightmares, but these were worse. I didn't wake up until 1 the next afternoon. But Harper was awake, and she was very cheerful. She was making us lunch. She was a very good cook. She was humming and dancing around the kitchen. I guess the only thing she really needed was that party last night. Maybe we'll go shopping today, after I get woken up and I eat. Harper was making her famous burritos that she loves to make. They were always so good. I still had a dot to give her, but I figured I would give it to her later. I got to the kitchen and greeted her with a smile, and she smiled back at me and went back to cooking. After we ate, we went shopping together, like old times. I worked the night shift at the hospital, so I didn't have to be in until 7 tonight. We went to the mall and stopped in Bath and Body Works first. We wanted some candles. Our place still smelled new. We got some perfumes, lotions, and body wash. We got the lot. We probably shouldn't have, but we're girls. Our next stop was Hot Topic. That was our all-time favorite store. After we spent money there, we went to Rue 21 to buy more clothes. After our shopping spree, we went home and I got ready for work. I told Harper bye and that I loved her, and I headed to work. I clocked in at 7 p.m. and started my duties. It was a long night. Morning arrived slowly. I clocked out at 7 a.m. and drove home after stopping at Starbucks. I stepped in the house, and it was quiet until I heard Harper scream. I dropped the coffees and rushed upstairs. That's when I saw the guy that was dancing with her last night, and he had his knife to her throat. I tried to stop him, but that only led to me getting a slashed hand. My best friend got stabbed that morning. I called 911, and they said they would send someone right away. Harper died before the ambulance arrived. The guy's eyes were nothing but a black abyss. He wasn't human. I tried for weeks to get the cops to keep the investigation open, but without any evidence, they couldn't give me closure. That guy got away with killing my best friend. I constantly wish it was me that got killed, but it didn't happen that way. The guy wasn't from this realm, but people would think I was crazy. After all, demons don't exist, right? Well, I knew they did now, and I will forever remember that morning. My best friend was killed. Bloodlust. I was going to kill a man tonight. That's why I went to the party. It was an extravagant black tie affair thrown on a warm, late summer evening at the end of July, hosted by none other than Walter Adler, the richest man in town. Midnight was approaching, and with it, my deadline. I dressed the part, wearing a maroon dress with a corset torso and a slit up the thigh. My makeup was reminiscent of the famous women in 1950s-era America. I was, as they say, dressed to kill. This particular estate had been blessed with a ballroom perfect for gatherings such as these. I was on the second floor of the Galant mansion, leaning over the rail of a balcony overhanging a bar in the center of the house. I was at my perch, an elegant nighthawk waiting for my prey. I surveyed the scene when a beguiling young man leaning against the bar caught my eye. He was an eye-catcher, that's for sure. It wasn't the extravagant, attention-seeking purple suit jacket unbuttoned on his chest that caught my eye, nor was it the loose black tie around his neck, the slicked-back umber-brown hair, or the toothpick used as a substitute for some form of nicotine between his teeth. It was the bloody knuckles, the immature carmine scar along his left arm, and the vague outline of a tattoo of a scorpion's stinger barely visible along the back of his neckline. That's when I knew he was the one. He was described in his profile almost identically to how he appeared. His demeanor confirmed what we knew of his personality, that he was egomaniacal, vainglorious, but unfortunately charismatic, and believes himself to be philanthropic. He was ingenious, devilishly handsome, and beyond intriguing. Surely only he could be the target I was assigned. It was such a shame I was going to have to kill him. There are plenty of ways to murder someone without any comprehension of observation on their part. In order to properly take the life of someone as smart as this particular gentleman, the key is to get him to notice the oddities engraved in your actions while providing enough of a distraction that he chalks it up to a beautiful dame's unfortunate personality. This man was no half-wit, but he was young, attractive, and vain. So I deduced that an old-fashioned plan of seduction would work out beautifully, for me at least. I turned around and sauntered gallantly through the crowd of laughing and smiling wealthy people, all pretending to have not a care in the world. If their lives were really that easy, I'd be out of a job. I demanded my presence to be conceded to subtly and silently, as I smiled politely at those I walked past, muttering a few phrases of pardon along the way, all the while never taking my eyes off this mysterious, charming stranger. I made my way down the mahogany staircase and along the edge of the room absolutely packed with dancers. I managed to spot the bar at the very end of the room and strolled innocently towards it. I sat in the bar stool next to him, the curious stranger that had become my prey, and waited like a vampire in a doorway for just a few seconds before making direct eye contact. From this distance, he was even more of an engrossing sight. He had dark scruff resembling a goatee on his chin, perhaps a dozen small white scars along his hands, arms, and even one on his forehead, and he smelled vaguely of fire whiskey. Most of all, there was an impossible-to-miss look of a tormented wild beast hiding deep inside his eyes. After making it clear I was sizing him up, I gazed at his unbuttoned jacket and smiled. He started to look me up and down in response before smiling softly and shifting his body to face me while still charismatically leaning against the bar. He thought he was at the advantage point. Little did he know he was walking right into my trap. He was playing along beautifully, yet stupidly all at once. I had no time to waste. I reached out towards him, offering my hand while gazing playfully up into his tortured eyes. I asked delicately, "Care to dance?" He grinned while grabbing my hand and slipping me off of the stool. "What's the name, Toots?" I stepped closer to him, so we were breathing the same air. I became acutely aware of the fact that he was at least 5 inches taller than I was. "Does it matter what my name is, as long as we both have a good time?" He chuckled and grabbed me by the waist while leading me out onto the dance floor. "Fair enough, princess." I was guided by the small of my back to the center of the dance floor as a romantic song began to play. This unfortunate target of mine was a phenomenal dancer, pulling me close, then pushing me away, spinning me around, and then even going so far as to dip me downwards as he gazed into my eyes in a tease. Then he'd stand me on my feet and dance with me normally as if he hadn't just nearly, almost, kissed me, coming close, but not close enough. Worst of all, he had made me want it, which was a curse so unforgivable I could hardly stand it. Dancing with him felt like heaven, which distracted me more than I'd ever like to admit. I wanted him, when he was the last thing I should be wanting. I was on a mission. I don't feel things. I've never felt things, and I wasn't going to start now. But with him, I was a spider lily, blossoming in the moonlight. If only I had any clue what was really blooming that night. Perhaps I would have done things differently. If that were the case, maybe I wouldn't be dead. He spun me around, gracefully twirling me through a doorway into an empty library, away from the noise of the party. A nice, secluded area where no one could see us. We stopped our dance, and he smiled. "You're a good dancer." I beamed and glanced up at him. "You're not bad yourself." I put a hand on his chest, bit my lip teasingly as I stared into his dark, menacing eyes. "Would you like to go get some air?" He chuckled in response, and I pulled back away from him. Laughter was not the correct reaction. He was straying from my plan. With a smirk, he replied, "How forward of you, baby doll. We've truly been having such a delightful time. I regret to inform you, I'm going to have to kill you." He pulled me closer again by the waist, refusing to let me escape. I furrowed my brows and scowled. The audacity. Who does this insolent, sorry excuse of an enemy mafia's champion think he is? It was my job to kill him, not the other way around. I was going to damn well make sure he knew that. I grabbed him by the tie and pulled downward, forcing him to drop to my eye level. Watch it, teddy bear. I saw my target first and I never miss. Bold of you to assume you didn't catch my eye as soon as you walked into the room. He squeezed my waist, spun me around, and pulled me backwards so my back was flush against him, and whispered in my ear from over my shoulder, "Your organization is corrupt. You won't see us coming. The scorpions will strike to kill before you can blink. You're just one of many targets, darling. Don't flatter yourself by thinking you're anything special." His failed attempt at hurting my ego was adorable. I spun back around to face him and wrapped my hands together behind his neck. "You assume I'm one of them. You're either one of them or they started hiring harlots to do their dirty work." I rolled my eyes and scoffed, but he wasn't wrong. He simply saw through my plan. I grabbed his waist, taking my turn to pull him close and whisper in his ear, "You're handsome, but I'm afraid that's where the charm ends, dear. I'll be the one doing the killing tonight." With that, I unsheathed my dagger through the slit in my dress and held it up to his throat. I tried to slit it, but he held his arm up just in time and was barely preventing me from doing so. He used his legs to kick me in the stomach, and I kneeled over, allowing him to grab the dagger and pin me against the wall from behind. "You're enamoring, glamorous, and clever. I'll give you that. What you lack is the ability to anticipate someone just as enticing, charming, and intelligent as you working for the other side." I found his accusations laughable. With a chuckle and condescending smile, I retorted, "Once again, you're full of assumptions. I'm harder to read than you think. Also, how bold of you to think even for a moment we're anything alike. You'll never be as good as me. After all, I would have killed you by now if I was in your position." He grabbed my wrists, pinning them behind my back, and he dug the blade a centimeter into the back of my neck. I felt the cool rush of fresh blood trickle down and along my spine. "As good as you are at what, darling? This strange little game we play, juggling puppets and puppet masters, doing as we're told with no question under these false assumptions that we are making a name for ourselves, doing something praiseworthy, boosting our egos with the blood of our enemies. If we're playing this game, you have to lose to win. You and I are both losers, love." I used my entire body weight to shove into him with my torso, knocking the dagger out of his hands. "Would you quit with all of the nicknames?" I screamed as he twisted my wrists and pushed me harder against the wall in an attempt at pinning me. He started to breathe heavily in the struggle, but managed to say, "I would, if you'd give me your name." I kicked him hard over and over in an attempt to get him off of me. I practically screamed in frustration. "Ha, fair enough." He pulled us both backwards in a quick, jarring motion, shoved me to the floor as he let go of my wrists, brilliantly giving himself a few seconds of an advantage to bolt for the nearest open window overlooking the evening city lights. I propelled myself against the floor and jumped to my feet, turning to face him, still standing in the window. I didn't bother chasing after him. If he was going to jump out the window, pushing him wouldn't do him any harm, and it was too late to stop him at this point. So, I ran my hands through my hair and smiled. "You could always still join me, you know." In a moment, he turned to face the fight-stained room. He smirked as he gazed at me with those haunted, gorgeous eyes. "Sorry, sweetheart, but I'm not interested in your sorry excuse of a mafia. You're nothing but a cult of bastards worshipping Miss Scarlet LaRue, and believe me, she isn't worth the hustle. Until next time, save a dance for me, darling." With that, he fell backwards out the window, resolute, by the shoes. "It's okay. Screw the budget. That's not this year's resolution. You deserve this. When the saleswoman asks you if you've done much running, laugh and gesture to your midsection. The woman will blink, force out a half-baked ha. It's a reaction of discomfort, not cruelty. You made it weird. You don't know why you feel the need to shame your own body in front of a stranger, but you blame it on her Lululemon leggings and air hostess smile. She makes you nervous. Most people do. When you go outside, sit next to a man on a bus bench. He's reading a book, and you recognize the cover from an English course in college. A man's body, clad in red, knight-like armor, with a white mask where his head should be. The mask is smiling and handsome on one side, twisted and snarling on the other, with a hollow void where his eyes should be. The Mysterious Stranger by Mark Twain. Good taste. When you sit, notice how the man's eyes dash over in your direction. It's almost imperceptible, and no other part of him moves an inch. Convince yourself that the chill trickling down your spine is a sign of an early winter wind. The sweat beneath your arm says differently. Change into your new shoes right there on the bench. They're tight, but almost comforting, reminding you of the cattle squeeze chutes on the farm you grew up on. Your new shoes are white, because white seemed luxurious and fresh and symbolic. New beginnings, clean slate. Now, curse and rub your own spit into a dirt smudge on the side. Remember that white is rarely ever white at all. Think of the stains spreading like mold along shower walls. When the bus arrives, sit near the front. You'll only take it half the way home today and walk the rest. New year, new you. The man with the book sits at the back of the bus. This is your bus stop in a residential area you don't know well. Apparently, it's his bus stop too. Start walking. Notice he is walking too. This shouldn't make you nervous. You always see the worst in people. What is wrong with you? Therapy should have been one of your resolutions. It's been 15 minutes, you're almost home, but you don't want him to know where you live. So you walk past the turn to your street and feel your heart drop to your toes. You can smell the fishy stench of your own stress sweat leaking through your corduroy jacket. 20 minutes, almost out of the residential area. In a couple blocks, you'll be on Commercial Drive, where you can enter a cafe or a bar and have a panic attack in a graffitied bathroom stall until the perceived threat is gone. It wouldn't be the first time. When construction blocks access to the street crossing you meant to take, you'll have to find a detour. Luckily, there's an alley to your left, a shortcut to safety if anything. You just need to move fast. Good thing you bought those shoes. When you hear the man's footsteps beating at your heels, run. 2. Eat healthier. Start your day off right with his bento box leftovers. He ate all the shrimp from the noodles and the sushi on the side, but saved you the edamame. That's all right. You didn't need those extra calories anyway. Don't make all that running and fighting from yesterday for nothing. Take a bite. You're not hungry, but you don't know when the next time you'll see food again will be. The noodles are cold, and they slide down your throat like earthworms. Don't complain about the temperature. Your mom always told you microwaves were evil anyway. You crouch over the food on a cold concrete floor. You've stopped crying long enough to take in your surroundings. You are confined to a small circumference around your bed, with a chain clamped around your ankle, the other end of it welded to a rusty metal pole coming out of the ground. The chain rattles with each move you make. Your bed is in the center of a room, bits of foam scattered around it from mice chewing the mattress. Next to it is a bucket, where eventually you will have to relieve yourself, though you'll hold it in until it hurts. There are no windows down here, and it smells like an old boyfriend's basement, a combination of mildew and old socks. air so thick, you feel as if you could cut into it with a knife. The corners of the room are dark but packed with things. Boxes stacked haphazardly, shelves overflowing with old books, loose papers on the ground. You can't make out what any of the books say on the spine, as much as you try to strain your eyes. So much for that clue. When he tells you to eat, you eat. Whatever he wants with you, he doesn't want you dead. Yet, take comfort in this. Hide the fork from your meal under your mattress. 3. Learn a new skill or hobby. It takes an average of 6 seconds to walk in a circle at the length of your chain. 3 seconds if you run. Count the moths that flicker around the buzzing light bulb above you. Count particles of dust in the air. Numbers were never your thing before. You were an English major once, though that life feels light years away. Divide experiences between before and after. Before, you had a cat. He had a scratchy meow and sprayed on your laundry, but slept in the crook of your arm every night. Before, you had a crush on your coworker Diane, even though she talked with her mouth open, and you caught her stealing from the baking display 3 times. After, you are shitting in a bucket. You curl up on your mattress, thin blanket pulled over your head, and cry. Try making an itemized list in your head of every kiss you've ever had. See if you can remember the script from the 1998 fantasy movie Willow. You almost can. For some reason, this makes you cry too. Go back to counting. The mice stayed hidden for the first couple days, but they're getting bolder. Keep track of every time one skitters over your hand or foot. Of all the horrors you could imagine a kidnapping victim to go through, boredom certainly was not one of them. On what you think could be the 8th day, try something different. You know the man only enters the basement twice. First, to take your used bucket, then to bring back a clean bucket and food. You have been so busy cowering in the farthest end of your chain away from him that you haven't gotten the chance to really observe. Pay attention this time. Start counting when he first unlocks the door. He keeps his eyes on the ground as descends the stairs and approaches to pick up your bucket. It doesn't look like guilt or nerves, but rather he does not seem to regard you at all, as if you are so far beneath him that your presence can hardly be perceived. You almost lose track of your counting, mind reeling. Why are you here at all when he acts as if he wants nothing to do with you? He is as nondescript a man as they come. Brown hair, dark eyes, with short, well-kept facial hair, thin-rimmed glasses, a button-down blue shirt, recently ironed, gray trousers, clean shoes. If you ever get out of this, you're not convinced you could pick him out in a police lineup. When he leaves, he shuts the door behind him, but does not lock it. These seconds are crucial. Above you, at one end of room, you can hear a toilet flush, running into pipes that go through the basement. More water running after that. Then there are footsteps to the other side of the house. He is there for a short time. Finally, the footsteps lead back to the basement door. He has returned with a freshly cleaned bucket in one hand and a tinfoil wrapped burrito in the other. He sets them both down beside you, wordlessly, and then he is gone again. The door is latched tight behind him. 4 minutes and 38 seconds. That's how long the door was unlocked for. Don't forget this. 4. Be more adventurous. Something is different today. Another moth hits the burning light bulb and falls dead into your matted hair. The mice, your only companions, have gone quiet. Upstairs, there is more movement than usual, things being dragged along the floor. Your stomach has been flip-flopping since you woke up. Call it intuition. there is the issue of that pesky iron shackle around your ankle. You made a valiant effort by nibbling off your toenails and using them as lockpicks, but they were too soft and bendable. You thought about breaking your ankle, but your heel would still be in the way. So now, you turn to the other end of your restraints, the metal rod coming out of the basement floor. At its base, it flares out into a square plate with large iron screws holding it down into the cement. The pole is speckled with a dusty red rust that follow down the first couple links in the chain. A memory flashes in your mind of you as a young girl, loose braids and dirt smudged over your summer freckles. Your dad had an old Chevy parked on the edge of the horse's pasture, weeds growing through the windows. You tried, with all the strength in your little arms, to open the door, but the handle snapped right off and sent you flailing backwards. It left red on your hand, and you thought the car was bleeding. There could be hope after all. You take your shoes from where they've sat dutifully by the bed and put them on. Pull the chain taut, and kick near the base where there is the most rust. Kick again, and again. The rust stains the white of your shoes. Take a break to wipe frustrated tears from your eyes, then try something different. Pull the chain towards you, taut again. Push your feet against the chain. Harder. Your legs begin to shake, and the chain bites into the flesh of your palms. Grit your teeth. Keep pushing. It bursts. You gasp, collapse to the floor, and weep. It's refreshing to cry from joy for a change. When the man comes to change your bucket, sit in front of the pole. Don't let him see you've escaped your shackles. The man raises his eyes to meet yours, and you can suddenly feel every single hair on your body. This is the first time he's looked at you since you were taken. It doesn't last more than a second, but you are shaking. He heads up the basement stairs, bucket in hand. Shake off the chills. Let them roll down your spine and out of your system. It's now or never. With clammy hands, pick up your broken chain and cradle it to your belly. Quiet. You can feel your heat thumping against your rib cage, and you breathe hard through your nose. Leave your shoes behind. Too loud. When you get to the stairs, pretend you are a feather, flitting weightlessly above the steps. Place your ear to the door. Try to hear past the pulsing of your own veins. The water is running. Open the door. 5. Read more books. When you wake up, all you see is a bright light ahead, and with some relief, ask yourself if you are finally dead. It takes a few bleary blinks for your surroundings to come back into focus. The light at the end of a tunnel becomes no more than a light bulb, flickered by the fluttering of wings. You are back in the basement. Sit up. Careful, not too fast. Your head rushes, and dots speckle your vision. You bring a hand to your head to steady it, but when you bring it down, your hand comes back sticky with red. You feel around with your hand some more, find that your hair is matted and clings to your forehead. Beneath the hair is the source of blood. It doesn't seem to be actively bleeding much, and what is there has already coagulated. Beneath where your head was laying, the mattress is soaked with your blood. You shuffle backwards away from it as your breathing grows erratic and shallow. Try to wipe your red hand off on your jeans. The blood is already caking under your fingernails. On unsteady legs, you manage to stand up. You realize that although you are back in the basement, your chain is still broken. Look frantically around the room for a weapon, or another escape you somehow missed before, until your eyes land upon the boxes and shelves. Maybe something in there could help. You hobble over to it, dragging your chain behind you, and throw open the first box you reach. It's only paper, and as you rummage, you leave red smudges and fingerprints all over them. You aren't paying attention to the words. but an image catches your eye. You stop, pull out the paper. It's a diagram of sorts, with labels and instructions in a language you can't understand. But what you do understand is that this diagram looks awfully like a pentagram. You pull out more papers, pay closer attention. Drawings of cloaked figures, goat heads, numbers and lists written in Latin and other old tongues. Box after box, they're all the same. You turn to the bookshelf, flipping open dusty tomes to more diagrams of demons. You toss the books on the floor, and they land with a satisfying thud. You blink back the dots forming in your eyes and steady yourself. Above you, footsteps are approaching the basement door. You lay back down on the mattress and pretend to be unconscious, right where he left you. 7. Appreciate the little things. You peek through your eyelashes. He is painting a pentagram in white on the floor. Beside him is an assortment of strange objects: wax drip candles, fragments of leg bones, a skull, raven feathers in a jar, glass vials of liquids and powders, glistening gemstones. It's almost comical, the most generic, vague Satanism you could imagine. A half-frantic giggle bubbles in your chest, tugging at the corners of your mouth. Bite your tongue to keep it down. His hands clamp down on your ankles and tug. He is dragging you off the bed to the floor just beside it where he's painted the pentagram. You hear the clinking of glass, the rattle of bones, as each object is arranged around your body. Then you can hear his breath above you. Feel his knees at the sides of your legs. He begins to chant. You risk a peek through small slits in your eyelid and see him kneeling over you, book in one hand and a knife in the other. You kick him in the stomach. He gasps and reels back, dropping both the knife and the book. But before you can scramble away, he is on you again, pinning your wrists to the ground. You can feel his hot breath on your face, spit flying out of his heaving mouth. He curses at you and tells you to stay down. Your fingertips brush the edge of the mattress beside you. Remember what you kept from the first day you woke up in this shithole. The fork. 6. Set healthy boundaries with the people in your life. You feel around for the metal, find its handle, grip it hard, then spit in the man's eyes. He loosens his grip on your wrists for just long enough. With utensil in hand, you thrust your arm up until it meets with his neck. The prongs sink into his flesh, as is he, were nothing more than a dense cheesecake. Now, he looks you in the eyes, and you do not cower. You hold there for a moment, driving the fork deeper in, just in case. When you let go, he takes a moment to react. Then his eyes widen, still locked with your own, and he stumbles backwards off of your body. His hand fumbles for the fork. There is blood trickling down onto his freshly ironed shirt. With a shaking hand, he pulls the utensil from his flesh, causing the blood to rush to escape the open wound in thick spurts. He holds a hand tight to his throat, trying to slow the loss, gasping and sputtering. He turns and runs to escape the basement. Get up. Follow him. As he fumbles with the lock on the door, you grab the back of his shirt and pull. In his shock, he loses balance and drops his key on the step beneath the door. He tries to grab onto you as he falls backwards, but you step quickly to the side and cling to the stair railing. Watch as he tumbles down the stairs, landing hard on the concrete below. He struggles to get back up, only making it to his knees as his movements grow more sluggish. You can hear him gargle on his own blood. He clambers towards the stairs again. Pick up the key. Your heart flutters at the click of the door unlocking. Open it. Ahead of you is a hallway, at the end of which is your exit to safety. Don't look back at the man groveling at your heels. Step out, shut the door behind you, and lock it tight. Mother Nature. The story of a serial killer. I don't think fuck, or any other derivative of that monumental word, should be changed to duck when I finger bang my passion into a text. If I ask a man to come over, we're not going to duck anything. South. Also, do you know that ducks take part in forced copulation? Biologists and other smartass types say that ducks waddle in a line because it makes them less susceptible to predators. They say the waddle also helps them forage for food. But I think they do it because back at the duck pond, the male ducks waddle their way into organized gang rapes of the female ducks. And ducks kill ducklings. All sorts of shameful criminal acts happen at the duck pond. Yet, some people don't want to eat ducks because of that cute waddling line. A duck is a lucky fuck that way, at least until it gets raped by other ducks, murdered by its parents, or a human who fails to find the charm in waddling decides to eat it. Predator. Prey. Another day. My cat loathes ducks, yet their rampages entertain her. We live in a gated community because I inherited a house here. This community created ponds throughout the neighborhood, filling them with ducks and, even worse, swans that patrol the streets like winged lunatics. Everywhere I look, there's a monster that wants to kill me. This cat I took in, she struggled to rip off my face seconds after we met. Then I fed her, scratched her ears, cleaned her wounds, and slayed the fleas that tormented her. Put a heat lamp on the screened-in porch so she can watch the ducks and swans brutalize each other. She helps me too, in ways that challenge basic concepts regarding help. By the way, it's good to meet challenges head-on, but not head-first. My last hookup learned that the hard way, so avoid following self-help ideas about how you control every challenge that crosses your path. You control as much as some other entity lets you. Let me tell you how I got this cat. As I mentioned, she wanted to kill me. It began with her clawing my face, which led to the discovery of a dead man's hand. Star, don't let anyone tell you that crashing into a wall to avoid hitting a cliché in an alley equates to doing the right thing. It equates to pain, especially if the four-legged fucker waits to attack you after you exit the car. The cat I took in waited for me to get the car door open, then let me know who owned the alley. The pain of others engages the masses. They heard the surrender of steel, followed by shrieking, so they scurried across the alley from business back doors like rats scurrying across a dumpster. Several videoed me as I pulled each claw from my face and struggled to dodge fangs. As I fell to the ground, I saw one man rummaging through my glove compartment. The cat finally let go with a low growl and then ran under the car. That's when I noticed the hand hanging over the low wall of a parking garage. I wasn't the only one who noticed. "Oh my God, there's a hand over there!" someone shouted. I darted across the pavement on my hands and knees to avoid feet intent on trampling. My skin ripped and burned. I panted as the pain from the crash and the crawl began to clash. The click of heels against the ground offered a moment's reprieve from the sensation of being ripped apart. Curiosity commands the ability to subjugate fear. Victims learn this firsthand. Without this act, no one moves on. I peeled my face off the ground. A woman in black leather pants and a tight white tank loomed over me, accessories dripping off her like groupies made of gemstones. She looked like Tom of Finland drew her if he had been into women. "Your clothing is so beige, no one else can tell where your blouse ends and your trousers begin. But I see you," she said. "You're like those dangerous creatures that blend in with the leaves." "Lady, I just crashed my car. I just shredded my hands and knees to avoid being trampled. Unless you're here to help, fuck off back to your dungeon." I said I see you. I didn't say anything about helping you. Well, not in the usual way. I turned back to the car, and she loomed in front of me again, though I never saw her move. I have more to say. You and that cat both play a vital role in the call. My call. You need to help each other, which helps me. You two are going to come to a mutual understanding somehow, some way. We sure are, the cat said. And that is when I fainted. Star. When I regained consciousness, news stations were filming the parking garage, the alleyway, and the soulless man who boasted to me that he lasted longer than other men, something he learned at an orgy for retirees. I went back to spend time with him because he was my first kill. I wanted more memories with him, like a mother saying goodbye to her child at college if the mother thrives on blood and guts. But all I saw was his hand, the one that struggled to get the knife away from me after the coke-fueled fucking and drug-laced wine. Someone had moved his body from where I left it, but I recognized the ring that signified his happy marriage to a wife who understood his needs. I longed to roll in his innards again, but it wasn't meant to be. The leather-clad woman told the EMTs to let me go. It's like she was never here, she said, cradling the cat. She knows nothing about a hand or any job related to it. The EMTs smiled. I felt like a kitten, but at least I was not a duck waddling into a bad group hug. Not yet. Star, a cat's methods for slaughter command merit. She's one of many masters created to maintain balance. At least I didn't ask a rhino to handle your tutelage, Mother Nature said, as she stretched her stiletto boots across my table. That's a one-time lesson, and quite an ugly one. You arranged the crash. You made choices that led to this moment. The cull relies on your choice and my preference. The cull demands my attention around the clock. That same attention consumes you, yet you lack any real skill at killing. You're uninformed about death, how to cause it, or navigate it with a professional standard. You left the body in a place where a homeless man sleeps, so he moved it. You have no real control. None of you do. You make choices while lacking control. That amuses me. Like arms grasping for God through the foam of a typhoon amuses me. Well, at least we do something right. I want you to live for an extended period of time, but you need more skill when you kill. You choose to kill. Fine, that helps me. But give me something to look forward to besides banality. You gush over your achievement, but last night in this city alone, 15 people killed a person they met online for sex. All obvious, sloppy efforts. Enough. The cat can give you some skill and flair. I mean, really, you two work well together. That alley battle was tremendous. Otherwise, look forward to death row. The cat can return to the alley. What's an extended period of time? You can't live forever, so until the cat dies. Keep in mind, that stuff about 9 lives amuses me too. Meow. Sabrina sat with one leg in the air, licking her ass. Master indeed. Yet masters die too. What will happen after I die? Maybe I wanted the dead to reach out through the veil and tell me. After all, I wanted to solve a big mystery for them in a way that impressed Mother Nature more than a typhoon drowning. I'm the one left salivating for knowledge in the dark, not them. Sabrina ceased licking and rubbed against my feet. We agreed to live together as predator and prey, though we both recognized the real predator in the room. Sabrina likes me to trap men like she traps mice, so she gave me a whole lesson on how to seduce prey with my walk. You mesmerize them with slink, she said, purring. Let them feel your kink vibration. Stop texting about ducks. Stop waddling like a duck before I actually place you in the pond with that second man. Mother Nature giving you a voice is the worst thing she's ever done. Where are the tuna treats? I want the whole bag this time. We each depend on the other to create balance for her and for you. The devil is in the details. I was 16 years old when they found the 6 bodies underneath our living room floor. I'm not one to share personal details, mostly because I have a tendency to run my mouth and say too much. But I think about that night often, usually as I'm just crawling into bed, in that time between hazy wakefulness and deep rest, which, if I'm being honest, I've never been the greatest sleeper anyway. I'm at my most productive at night, and as a result, I spend a lot of time staring up at the ceiling, contemplating if it will be the night I spill all the messy details to some reporter that's trying to make it big. But then I think, the media has already had their fun with my family, and their exuberant reporting, rightly or wrongly, landed my good name in the history books by the time I turned 17. If I were to set the record straight, it would go a little something like this. I can't forget that sound. It's one of the most haunting things about that night, the thing I can't quite shake, and it has followed me my entire life. Thud, 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 thud. It was a hand at our front door, pounding incessantly. It sent shockwaves from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. I broke out in a cold sweat, realizing that the swirl of blue and red lights outside my window, paired with the pounding at the door, meant one thing: the police. My mother, who was notorious for sleeping through just about everything, raced into the hallway, and through the crack of my door, I could see her standing at the top of the stairs, hand to chest. She was wearing her favorite silky pink nightgown, the one that grazed the floor as she walked. She always looked like she was floating when she wore it. But in that moment, it dragged behind her in a fury. Thud, 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 thud. My panic didn't keep my curiosities at bay. I jumped down from my bed and padded toward the door. I peered out, waiting for what came next. My mother's voice was the first to break through the weighted silence. "What is it? What do you want?" she said. Then came a series of sentences that melted together. Talk of my father, where he was. My mother questioning if he got into an accident. Then a firm voice asking who was home. My mother's distress soared another octave. She demanded they call their commanding officer so she could talk to him or her directly. I had never seen her so angry before. I peered over the banister to find the 2 officers, standing on either side of my mother, in the entryway. "You have no right," my mother yelled. One of the officers mumbled something to her. Then she called out for me and my younger brother, Rob. I didn't want to descend those stairs. When the police are involved, a bad ending always follows, and I wasn't ready for my bad ending. "It's all right," he said, lifting his palm to us and gesturing to come down to the landing. With my brother under my arm, I took that first step down and stepped right into hell. They ambushed my father when he came home, tackled him as soon as he came through the door. Poor guy didn't even notice the 2 cop cars parked outside because he had spent the last few hours pounding down gin and tonics. While Robbie was watching TV in the living room, I snuck around the corner, walked down the hallway, and positioned myself outside the kitchen door. For some reason, the police thought the best place to question him was where we ate our food. "Tell me where the bodies are, Jimmy," one of the officers said. "I don't know," my father replied, but his voice betrayed him. He couldn't hide his shakiness. A grumble of incoherent words, then, more clearly, "Do you even have a warrant to be here?" My mother. She had watched one too many Law and Order episodes over the years. "It's a reasonable search, probable cause," said the other officer, his voice much deeper. "Don't need one when you pose an imminent threat to our community. You know me. You know my family," my father said, his voice fumbling on the word family. "For God's sake," my mother yelled. "Don't say another word, James. We need our lawyer here." "Jimmy, we all know the kind of work you do, and considering the circumstances, I can't look the other way just 'cause we're friends." My father was a scientist. That's what I told people who couldn't wrap their head around the industry jargon. But to those who really knew him and his work at the university, he was an expert in forensic and human sciences, criminal forensics, if we are being precise. He spent his days teaching people about chemical compounds, cleaning and evaluating dead bodies, and the proper techniques to preserve evidence. He was a brilliant man and an extraordinary teacher. I would know. I'm his kid, and he taught me everything. But if anyone knew how to get rid of a body, it was him. In the last 12 months, 7 university students had gone missing, 4 of which were directly enrolled in his graduate forensic seminar. The same faces that flashed across the nightly news had been in our home. They spent time on our front porch. They tossed back a beer or wine while discussing local crime scenes. They ate at our dinner table, studied in the hammock hanging between 2 willow trees in our backyard. He was even seen chumming it up with students at happy hours. If it wasn't clear already, my father loved his students, adored them, actually, to the point where he treated them like his own children, even though they weren't. "Did you really think people wouldn't notice, Jimmy?" an officer asked. "Everyone noticed," I thought. "How could you not?" "Tell us," they pleaded. "It's time," they said. "Where are they? We have to bring them home. You don't need to hold this secret anymore, Jimmy." I have to admit that even though it's been 20 years since that night, their certainty in that moment still makes my blood boil. They had such confidence in their accusation, and so little to show in the way of proof. Because, let's be honest, a close relationship with a student is a pretty loose thread when it comes to tying someone to murder. Unfortunately, my father was at his limit for keeping secrets. "They're under the living room floor," he said. At that moment, I fell forward, spilling onto the kitchen floor. I had forgotten just how weak that door was, and I would pay greatly for my curiosity. Because even as I was staring down at the black and white tiles, hoping I was invisible, I could feel the weight of his gaze on me. And when I looked up, our eyes locked. I couldn't breathe, couldn't force my lungs to expand. This was it. This was that moment. The ending that I knew was coming. His eyes told me the only thing I needed to know. The details of that night have been bent and twisted by the media. So many stories, so little accuracy, which is ironic considering the news is supposed to hold itself to the highest level of truth. But I suppose I should give them some grace. They're only human, and humans get things wrong. But I digress. My father never spoke another word. Not at the police station, not in the trial, and definitely not to me. My last moments with my father were spent in observation while the police pulled my childhood home apart, while they dragged 6 bodies out from the depths of our foundation. You know what's funny? The guilt in his eyes turned to shock, and it got me thinking. Did he not predict it would turn out this way? Is this not the ending he imagined? My mother leaving his side, our home being torn apart, his daughter's presence as it all went down. Was he worried about the woman I would become if he was found guilty? I had so many questions. One very important one, but I wouldn't get to ask it that night. It didn't take long for a jury to convict him. Only 3 weeks. The fingerprints, clothing fibers, and driver's licenses hiding in our basement were enough to put him in jail for life without parole. And the papers complained it was too easy, that my father was the sloppiest, yet most intelligent killer our town had seen. It was as if he wanted to get caught. One journalist said he was, and I quote, "the only educated, well-versed scientist with a knack for murder and childish mistakes. He wouldn't have been able to clean up spilled milk." Let's be clear, my father was no idiot. He was not childish or impulsive. He was kind, warm, and exacting. He was present for everything in my life, showing up to every parent-teacher conference, soccer game, and choir concert. He showed great regard for my interests, encouraging me to try anything and everything, even if it was a bit odd. Like when I said I wanted a taxidermy kit and he bought me one the next day. He was a good father, not a monster. The only thing he was guilty of was spending an increasing amount of time with his students, to a point where he started missing family dinners and school events, then birthdays. But tabloids don't want to hear about the happy shit. They want the darkest parts of a family tragedy. They beg to hear about the warning signs, the late nights, how he protected the specifics of his work, holding the details of his day job like a precious piece of blown glass. They wanted to know about those nights my father caught me in his laboratory, poking around and playing with his chemicals and tools, or the panic in his eyes when he saw me playing in his sacred space, a place I was never allowed to explore on my own. Or they might have been more interested in how he hated when I spent too much time with his students, how I asked so many questions, got too close to young men that were twice my age. Certainly that detail would have popped in the tabloids. But I never gave an interview to the press. Actually, I never spoke to anyone about my childhood, or what was left of it after my mother slipped into a state of catatonic depression and my brother went to live with my uncle. Considering how fast people turned on my father and how much my life had imploded, I figured the best way to stay under the radar was to keep a tight lip. And once I turned 18, I moved to a completely different coast, changed my name, dyed my hair, curated a new life. But a new identity doesn't erase the truth. It can't kill biology or erase the girl that was. His history can't be escaped in cases like this, and my history called to me, over and over again. Even after I got married, had 2 children, and started a new job as a physician's assistant, I still thought about my other life, before I became this woman named Jennifer. After 20 years, I felt that tiny question nagging at me. One flight, and a 35-minute Uber later, I was standing just outside the jail that held the man I once called a father. All of those years without exchanging a single word. I couldn't be sure if he would even agree to see me. But then I remembered the man he was, how much he loved me and adored being a father. I willed myself to move and opened the door. I signed in at the visitor's desk and waited for the guard to come out and say that he would see me. Hours passed without a word, which chipped away at my confidence. But just as I was about to stand up and walk out, the door opened and I was ushered in. The room was small, warm from poor air circulation. It smelt of sweat and metal, with a splash of bleach and Windex. I'm sure my father hated the swirl of incompatible chemicals. I certainly couldn't stand it, but I swallowed my pride and sat in the only metal chair that was available. A few moments later, on the other side of the plexiglass wall, he sauntered in. His gaze was set on the floor, but I could make out the signs of aging on his face, no doubt from stress and time spent around mildewy walls. I leaned forward, picked up the phone. I waited for him to do the same. And when he did, he finally looked at me. So many years, so many memories between us, and one question. "So," I started, "do you want to know where I hid the seventh body?"